one of the big differences in the game, 69 to now, yet Ron Taylor led the team in saves with 12. Which meant that your starters were going more than 3 times through the order, which is unheard of today. I mean, they were pitching complete games, or you didn't need Ron Taylor all that often with that pitching staff.
Oh, we had a great pitching staff with Seaver, Kuzman, Gentry, Jim McAndrew, Tug McGraw, Nolan Ryan, Cal Kuntz, Don Cardwell, Ron Taylor. I mean, the list goes on. It was a great team effort. And as you mentioned, Taylor had 12 saves and pitched great and saved the second game of the World Series. A lot of people forget. I think he won one game in the playoffs against the Braves and saved the second game of the World Series. If we don't win game 2, we're liable to lose 4 in a row. And he was just an unsung hero, but we had such great starting pitching. I mean, between Seaver and Kuzman and Gentry, and then you'd spot start McAndrew and Tug and Nolan Ryan would go in and just overpower everybody. And I know somebody's going to ask me about why the Mets traded Nolan Ryan. But I will say this: every team makes bad trades. But we had a great pitching staff, and the thing that people tend to forget is that we had a great defensive team too, up the middle with Jerry Grody, who I really believe was the best catcher in baseball that year. And I played with Johnny Bench. But you had Harrelson, Weiss Boswell, and Tommy Agee up the middle. It was just a tremendous defensive ball club. But again, it was a team effort, and Kuzman on any given day could beat anybody and prove that he was a terrific pitcher. And if we don't win that second game in the World Series, who knows what will happen. But it's a different world now as we know it, and you won't see the complete games anymore. I mentioned to you that stat that I heard about Tom Seaver, about the greatness in Tom Seaver. I heard the other day, he won 311 games, but in 208 games that he started, he gave up 1 run or less in 7 innings in 208 games. I mean, that's an incredible statistic, and I think history will show he's one of the great pitchers of all time.
Now, after game 1, you lost game 1 with Seaver on the mound.
I made the last out in game 1. I know you want.
I wasn't going to bring.
I know you want to say that.
But so, what was the feeling in the clubhouse after that?
Well, we lost that game, and I don't think anybody was really down. He got hit a little bit hard. Don Buford hit a home run in the bottom of the first. He didn't have his usual great stuff, and he didn't have his great stuff in the playoffs against Atlanta. But nobody was down. We had Kuzman going the next day, and I think that was a big plus for us. Jerry was capable of anything on any given day. I used to call Seaver Van Gogh and Kuzman Patton. They were complete opposite people, but Jerry would fight for you in a minute, and Tom would finesse the heck out of anybody and be able to strike out anybody and pitch wonderful games. But they were just complete opposites, but both great pitchers. And so we had Kuzman going the second game, and we win that game, and then come back and win the next 3 with some luck on our side. Plays that were made that were fantastic. The Swoboda catch, Tommy Agee's 2 great catches in game 3. Incidentally, you see my legs running by him in right field, telling him he's got plenty of room. I always kidded him when he was around. When he made those great catches, I said to him, Tom, you made an easy play look hard in right field. You screwed up, and now you're reaping all the benefits from everybody thinking it was a great play. I know you screwed it up. We would laugh about it, but he made 2 great plays in games. He hit a home run in the bottom of the first, saved a lot of runs, and was really a retribution for him because he had a tough year the year before when Bob Gibson hit him in the head in the first game of spring training and never recovered from that. But game 2 was the most important game to me because we don't win that, we're in some trouble.
Right. And you took the next 4. Now, to make a connection to the museum and Apollo 11, where were you guys when Armstrong took the first steps on the moon?
It was a year of fate for us, and most of the fate, 99 and 9/10% of it, was a good fate for us. We were in Montreal, and we're getting on a plane, and they announced that the plane has engine trouble. So we go back into the airport in Montreal, and we're sitting there at the lounge, and all all of a sudden the walk on the moon happens, and it was an incredible experience for all of us to be sitting there. We could have been up in the air and just heard about it, and we, as luck would have it, we were able to watch it and cherish that moment as proud Americans, because it was just a wonderful thing. And again, this one of the reasons that 69 team resonates with so many people is because not only where we came from, but what was going on in the world at the time, a world that was really upside down in terms of problems. The war in Vietnam was tearing the country up. The city of New York was in a terrible situation, financially, emotionally, socially. The world was crazy. And here's one thing that we can all be proud of, and never knowing that we eventually are going to win a division and win a pennant and win a World Series. This was July, and so we still hadn't really made a move yet. And so for all of us who got a chance to see that, it was chills to say the least. And we go and take a walk in here and see some of the footage and some of the things that remind us of it. It was a wonderful experience for all of us to be there. And as luck would have it, our plane had trouble. Otherwise, we would have never seen it.
Luckily, you didn't get up to Woodstock around that time, because you may not remember any of this stuff.
A few of us might not come back.
Now, 25 years ago, you were instrumental in bringing sort of a real focus on the 69 team. And now it's 25 years later. And you wrote a new book, which everybody, if you don't have, you could still get. You wrote a book a number of years ago called Magnificent Seasons, which talked about 69, and not just the Mets, it was the Knicks and the Jets as well. So what was the impetus for this book?
I wanted to write another book for this 50th anniversary because this team is so special. I really believe it's one of the most iconic teams in the history of baseball, and I don't say that from an egotistical point of view, believe me. I admit that it's not the greatest team ever to win a World Series, but it certainly is one of the most memorable, and I believe it's for two reasons. It's going to be another long-winded answer, I know. But, for two reasons. First, because where this team came from. 1962, from the inception of the Mets, they were just an awful team. First year record was 40 wins, 120 losses. I don't even know if you can try to lose 120 games. Don't make it happen. But every year, that team finished last, except 1968. We finished ninth, a half game out of last. And known as the lovable losers, I think from where that, and I can't take the blame for those early years, Andy. I wasn't there, but I can take the blame for part of '68 because that was my first year. But I really think people remember how bad that team was and how we won a World Series against an incredibly talented Baltimore Oriole team that won 109 games that year. And I think they look at it as just an incredible feat. And I think that the love and admiration for that team is part of the reason is because we were so bad. With that being said, I also believe that everybody remembers what was going on in the world at the time. As I mentioned before, it was upside down. Everything was going bad. And what we did is we made people forget about their problems for a brief period of time. I've had over the years so many people come up to me and just say thank you. People who weren't even born, kids who weren't even born, know about that team from their parents and their grandparents. We made people feel better about their lives. They latched on to us because we showed there was some light at the end of the tunnel. If we could win, anybody could win. And I think people have just cherished those moments and passed them on from all these generations. And I really believe those two things are the reason that this team resonates so many years later. I do think in the history of the game, if you stop and think about it, some of the young people here might not remember this, but when you think about teams that really changed Major League Baseball, and teams that affected cities they were in, you got to go with the 27 Yankees who had Ruth and Gehrig and that great all-star team. And then you got to go to 1947 with Jackie Robinson and what he did for the game of baseball. And then maybe even the '68 Detroit Tigers for what they did for Detroit, but certainly in the mix is the 1969 Mets for what we did for the game of baseball and what we did for the city of New York. And I think those things have been passed on for all this time, and now 50 years later, I get people coming up to me and saying, you know, I was in the worst place in the world. I was in Vietnam, and for a brief period of time, you made me forget about that. I mean, I can't imagine anybody not feeling better about somebody saying, you made me feel better about my life. It's got to make your life feel better, and I think that's the ultimate feeling all of us get when somebody says that to us. And I think those things are the reason why this team, 50 years later, really kind of is still special. And quite honestly, I'm not sure you'll ever see another team that's 50 years old get the kind of love and affection that we got, and we still get. And it's a sad state of affairs, because I think the world is a little different now. The person that was born 30, 40 years ago or 25 years ago, we're always thinking about what's right in front of them now. There's really no love of the past anymore. And I say that with some sadness, because I think this team will probably be one of the last of a historical nature that you celebrate 50 years later.
Well, everybody here is probably in agreement, yes?
Yeah.
That's right. Before we go to questions, I want to point out we have Fred Cambry up here, former Pittsburgh Pirate and local Long Islander, who's with us tonight.
You know, I tried to get through.
I know.
He beat Tom Seaver, and what day was that, Freddie?
Yeah. September 20th.
Oh, I knew he would. And I took an 0 for 4 against him, but he never lets me forget that. But he was a terrific pitcher. And
Actually, as he said, the only reason he's here tonight is to remind you.
yeah.